Support the Dungeon Masters Dojo by heading over to Apple Podcasts and Podchaser and leave a review. Take the time to leave a comment as well. This helps make us more searchable to those listeners interested in content such as ours. But more importantly, we want to know how we are doing and what topics you would like to hear about.
Another way you can support the DMD is by buying the DMD a beer, so we can continue to deliver quality content to you, our listeners. This also helps us upgrade and replace equipment. Head over to buymeacoffee.com/the-DMD and buy us a beer, or 3, or 5. Don't forget to say something nice or mean. We don't care. You're buying us a beer. Now on to this week's episode.
Your intrepid adventuring party has narrowly escaped the horde of kobolds in the abandoned mine. But now you face a massive demon with a flaming whip. He moves menacingly forward onto the stone bridge.
Dude, isn't this the Mines of Moria scene from Lord of the Rings?
No?
Yeah. Chapter 5, the Bridge of Khazad-dûm. Gandalf fights the Balrog?
No, this has kobolds.
Oh, sounds to me like you're shamelessly appropriating ideas.
And that can only mean we're talking about 5 more habits of a good DM this week on the Dungeon Masters Dojo. Support the Dungeon Masters Dojo by heading over to Apple Podcasts and Podchaser and leave a review. Take the time to leave a comment as well. This helps make us more searchable to those listeners interested in content such as ours. But more importantly, we want to know how we are doing and what topics you would like to hear about.
Another way you can support the DMD is with a small monthly donation, so we can continue to deliver quality content to you, our listeners. This also helps us to upgrade and replace equipment. Head over to Anchor, to the Dungeon Masters Dojo page, and click the support button. And now, onto this week's episode.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Dungeon Masters Dojo podcast. This is a show for game masters, as well as experienced and new players alike. We hope to bring you the tools needed to not only be a great GM, but to help you develop as a player. I'm your host, Louis Aponte. Our stars of the show are Scott Labby and Bill Robotile. Let's enter the dojo and see what both Bill and Scott have in store for us today. Hey Bill, hey Scott, how's it going?
Apparently we have more good habits.
Yeah. You can never have too many good habits.
So I've been told. I don't really believe it. But
Yeah, you at least have to have as many good habits as you have bad habits. And I have a lot of bad habits, so I need to carry around buckets of good habits to compensate for those.
You shall not pass. I guess with that said, it's okay to steal ideas.
Sure. I encourage you to steal ideas.
We've talked about this. Where do you draw your ideas from? What's your source of inspiration? Customer service announcement, please refer to episode number 5. There are people who make a crap ton more money than we do or ever will, making up people, places, and things.
Yeah, way more talented.
And if they're not using it right this very moment, well...
we'll borrow it.
Yeah.
We'll give it back when we're done.
Yeah, just borrow it for a little while.
With minor tweaks.
Yeah, and a few sweat stains. But
coffee ring, maybe.
yeah, it's fine to the thing of it is that it's as great as it is to be original, it's very hard to be original. Because I kind of feel like most of the really good ideas have already been taken. They've already been used.
And then reappropriated for a video game.
Yeah. But it's okay to borrow ideas from other dungeon masters or storytellers or whatever. Books, magazines, TV shows, those sort of things is perfectly fine. Grab a hold of those and use them. Or even stuff that's outside of the genre you're playing in. There's a lot of things that can translate very neatly, into fantasy and vice versa. I mean, if you just change the outfits everybody wore in Star Wars,
it'll
pass for a fantasy movie.
Yeah. Change them again, it'll be a Western.
Yeah. It's very easy to use those storylines and those ideas and translate them into other genres, and there you go. You have a story arc. You have a framework or an outline for a campaign. Just put your own slant on them.
Mm-hmm.
When I ran that game in our week long, I took that from a video game called Vanguard. Scott, you remember that game?
Yeah.
They had the ancient warehouse, and then everything that was in that game, I kind of just put a different slant on it or twist on it inside the warehouse. So yeah, you can do that. It makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, it does. It does. And your players probably aren't going to notice unless it's blatantly obvious.
Yeah.
And they really aren't going to care. As long as they're having a good time, nobody cares.
If they do notice, just be sure to not replicate the answer or the outcome. Because if they did see it and they recognize it, well, they know a way out. And now they're going to circumnavigate everything that you've done for the encounter. So, you want to couch it with a little bit of, like I said, change the outfits and maybe tweak it enough where the outcome is altered. It has to be a little bit different.
Yeah, because that's what I did with that game. I actually took the front half from Vanguard, and then I took, I don't remember I think I called the Dragon the Sleeper. That was actually from EverQuest. So I kind of mixed the two just so there was no answer that anybody knew.
Yeah, and as long as it's not obvious, you don't want to have your party be told that they have to go drop a bracelet into a volcano.
Yeah.
Or the world's going to end. But you can use the basic concepts of a lot of these things. A lot of my research happens in B movies. B movies are great. Old 80s or 90s B movies are terrific because how many people watch them, and even those people that have watched them
probably forgot by now.
Yeah, they forgot about them because they're really not that memorable for their great storylines.
And those people are really that old now.
Yeah, they are, and we forget things a lot because of that.
Way too often.
Like Bill's not wearing pants again.
Oh wait.
And we had to get him. We had to pull him out of the neighbor's backyard. He thought he was at Sears.
I thought it was awful cool down here.
Again.
That explains why they wouldn't break my 50.
So, what do you think about railroading characters?
Railroading is awful,
but necessary.
But necessary. It's railroading can be done and done well. Really, I mean, anything involving being a dungeon master is more an art than a science.
This is true. Yeah, there's no steadfast formula.
Right. I look at railroading is like having a beer, right? So it's okay to have a beer every now and again, just like it's okay to railroad every now and again, only a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. But you don't want to make a habit of it, right? You don't want to make a habit of drinking beer all the time or any other alcoholic beverage because then you can run into problems. And the same is true for railroading. Railroading, if you want your party to go to a certain location, speak to a certain NPC, or have an encounter with a particular opponent to further the storyline, then it's okay to do that. But it's really important to make it not look like you're railroading.
True.
The PCs.
I mean, tables are diverse, right? And anyone with a Lou-like character will soon find out that they're heading off on a wild tangent pretty quickly. If you're blessed with the absence of a Lou-like character, then guess what? You're going there anyways. It's just going to take a little longer.
I can't imagine what that must be like, Bill.
Me either. That's why it's blessed.
It's got to be so easy to run a table without a Lou there.
Not having to worry about every 10 minutes.
I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, it's necessary because sometimes you got to gently force the direction of the story, but to be tactful and plan it out. All right, it'll serve your storyteller best. All right? Anticipate the potential derailment and make plans ahead of time. Allow your players to go off in different directions plot-wise because they're likely to give you a vast supply of resources and material to use for and against them later on in the story. But if you make a habit of giving them the reins, they're going to pull harder. It's going to be harder to pull them back. They're going to go off rails more often. So you almost have to give them gentle reminders and pushes, just preferably not all out railroading them.
Yeah.
Try to nip it in bud before it happens.
Yeah, nudging, a little nudging.
Yeah.
A little nudging is fine because it doesn't make your campaign linear.
Right.
And they're going to go off the rails. Plan on, even if you don't have a Lou or a Sin. If you're listening, Sin, we love you.
We do. But yeah, there's the wild card, and then there's just plain old wild.
Yeah, and that is, I will say, and I don't want you to feel bad, I will say that you, Sin, are part of the reason why I can't grow hair. But it is...
Bill, why are you laughing?
I know. I don't have any hair, but
and Bill has a similar haircut. His hairline starts about mid back, like mine does.
Yeah,
so that's why I guess Sin's and my hair are still full because we're not in the chair.
Yeah,
there you go. There's a correlation.
But there's something in the works. So if you have if you happen to have a Lou or a Sin at your table, the wild card and the wild contrarian, you may need to not necessarily nudge them on the rails for a little bit, but throw your whole shoulder and weight into them to knock them back on, and then sit on them so they stay there for at least a little while.
Heavily swing a railroad tie.
Yeah. But how do you do that? What are some of the techniques you use to kind of pop people back on the rails for a little while so the campaign can get some momentum?
We actually discussed this in a couple previous episodes, but your NPCs are going to be your greatest ally. Right? They're what you're going to use to get them back on track. The lack of information, the lack of resources, the lack of cooperation amongst the NPCs, so they aren't going to get what they want when they do decide to head off on goodness only knows where. But we don't have that in this town. Well, I need X component or item or armor. Oh, we don't have an armor right here. The next town over has one, though. The next town over is where they're supposed to be. So your NPCs, I see, is the number one greatest ally.
I agree. I'll often use an NPC companion to kind of coax players into going a certain way to further the storyline. That's something that they, after a while, and they've kind of developed that trust, and they begin to like their NPC companion. It holds a lot of weight when there's that suggestion,
especially when a couple of suggestions in the past have panned out for them.
Yeah, and of course, you don't want to run into the all-powerful, all-knowing NPC, because your players will do everything they can to kill that NPC just to spite you. It's like the Ides of March, on the Senate steps. They'll get their murder hobo on.
Yep. Caesar must die.
I'll drop clues or repeat story hooks too to accomplish that same thing.
Right.
We talked about that in your campaign.
Yes.
Or NPCs, one of those episodes.
Probably both.
Both.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when subtlety fails, because subtlety sometimes falls on deaf ears, sometimes, depending on who's wearing those ears.
What'd you say?
Yeah. It may be necessary for a bit of Deus Ex Machina to happen. You may have to have that enemy scout discover them to push them towards a location or towards a fight they need to have to further the story. Mm-hmm. You just may have to just step in and open the door and shove them through. I think the problem that occurs with railroading is when you use it frequently.
Yeah.
When it's a mainstay.
Right. Because if that's a problem and you think you have to, that might be time to sit your table down before you even open the session and go, okay, guys, this is what's going on, and it's not working. Right? Are we here to follow an adventure, or are you just here to, if what all you want is a dungeon crawl, then I'll give you a dungeon crawl. If you're not interested in a story, you just want to hack on stuff and do dumb stuff, great, then that's what we'll do. It makes it easier for me. I don't have to write a big, complicated story. But call them out on it before the session even begins, and find out where their head's at. They may not even realize they're doing it. They may just say, hey, we're having a great old time. And if you don't say something, they're just going to continue to have a great old time at your expense.
Sometimes it's the GM too. Sometimes, if you're not careful, you can kind of shove your players into a game that and a behavior that you want them to exhibit. You know what I mean? Like you're railroading them too much so that they follow some prescribed course of action that you may have in the back of your head, or you're too invested in the movie. You pulled those ideas from, so you want them to play through the movie or the book or the comic book.
You want them to follow the script.
Yeah, exactly.
There is no script, people.
Nope, no. And if there is, there shouldn't be. Throw it away. Get rid of it. Player agency is huge.
That harkens back to my dislike of most of the, back then modules, now adventures or whatever they call. Campaigns. Although they're campaigns, they're better now. They're considerably better now. But back in the day, it's like, no, they had to follow that linear path, and I did not like that.
Yeah, I think we're gonna, guys. We have an episode on these coming up, so keep your eyes open for them. But they have their place. I'm not a huge fan. I own all of them. I don't know why.
You have an issue.
I do. There's a lot of issues, really. But they have their place. Let me just say that.
Yeah.
And yeah, sometimes they could be really, really linear, and other times they could be too much of a sandbox. But player agency is a really, really important thing in the table and in the game.
That drives the table. It drives the story.
Yeah.
It drives the encounters. Just don't let them drive the bus.
Too much.
Too much.
So I think with that said, we should talk about don't doing things that you don't want in the game.
Yeah, we talk a lot about the DM and pretty much, kind of being accommodating to the players, which is really, really important. But you don't do anything in your game that you don't want to do. You want to deliver a good gaming experience to your players. And of course, a huge part of that is listening to them and giving them what they want, but you have to also consider what you want out of the game as well, because you're, as the dungeon master, you're equally as important as the players. I mean, you're a player in the game as well. Your role is different, but you're still a player in the game. So don't ever do anything in a game you don't want to do.
Exactly. I mean, I took this to mean going in directions that could make you, as the game master, or even some of your players, uncomfortable. In relationship to certain topics and points of view that could be off-putting to some individuals, including yourself as the game master. So, I mean, Session 0 is the perfect place to have this discussion about boundaries, and that'll help keep things in check. And we've done, discussions on this already as well. But occasionally, though, a player may decide to head your story in that direction.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because, we've talked before, like you said, about the DMs kind of crossing boundaries. But that's something players can do as well.
Very often.
Yeah, and that could be just as problematic as when a DM does that. I
mean, I think as a game master, you should be quick to politely and tactfully stomp the hell out of it.
Yeah.
Stop it. If it's a side discussion, and remind the player in question that you need to clean up this issue. We discussed this in Session 0. This is something that makes people uncomfortable. We need you to stop it. At least that's how I would approach it. You manage the story progression, and the players provide the material for you to do so, which is all well and fine. But when they start going off script, and you may not see it immediately, but it's been discussed, and a player decides to head that direction for whatever reason, just pull them aside saying, we've already had this discussion.
Yeah, that's I've had players take the game to like really bizarre places, playing out some weird fantasy, and I've had to be like, this isn't really the type of group or game.
Not the correct venue.
Yeah. And sometimes they may just have to go find something a little better suited for them. And that Session 0, like you said, is huge. I mean, that's something that you should always take the time to have. It's not as fun as getting in there and playing the game, but it's probably one of the more important things to do, because that's when you say, this is the type of game that we are running, that I'm going to run. It's going to be high fantasy, or if it's going to be grim and gritty or whatever have you, to let the players know what the tone is going to be.
That's where all the parameters are set.
Yeah.
And you need to enforce and stay constant on those parameters as well.
Also, I think it's a good time for the player to approach the GM with things that he may want to see in the game as well, and maybe either the GM will say okay or no. But it's a good time for both parties to get everything out in the open.
Yeah, you have to make concessions as a GM so that you can deliver some things within reason to your players, so that everybody gets that experience they want, and the players too. You guys out there, you got to make concessions to your GM. It's one of those. It's a social contract that everybody's engaging in, so it's a give and take both ways.
So I think the next thing we should talk about is the GM's responsibility on checking the PC's character sheets and everything that goes along with it, reviewing their character from time to time, just to make sure that experience is on the up and up. Because for example, on our last getaway, we were sitting here talking, and I was like, hey, we're level 9. I think you both were like, I thought you guys were level 8. But then Andrew was here, and he went out and got his character verified that it was level 9. But that's when we verified everybody's experience, because sometimes some guys forget to write their experience down, and some guys, and I hate to say it, may boost that experience a little bit and think they're not going to get caught.
The old days of first edition, when you got the 10% bonus if you had all your prerequisites.
That's right, yes.
Yeah, it's important to do that. Check on those character sheets to make sure that. Well, how many times have we checked on our player sheets and we're like, oh well, this guy's got a dozen magic items just kicking around. He must be rattling when he's walking. He's got all these magic items, and here's someone at 9th level who's got like a bag of holding.
Yeah, and that's it.
And this guy that's walking around with all these magic items, most of them he can't use, but he's got them. And most of what he's got, other characters could use and be very effective. It's just one of those things that's really important to do, because that opens it up for dialogue too. It's like, hey, it's not cool that you're hoarding all this stuff.
It may seem a little Big Brother-ish, but it will cut off a lot of possible issues later on, like hoarding of magic, or like, where did this item come from? I thought you lost it or sold it or gave it away to so-and-so. Why is it still in your sheet? Oh, I forgot to give it away. Oh, until you needed it, right? And then you're going to try to use it. Or your bonuses don't add up. How did you come by those numbers? Show me the math.
Yep.
+7. All right, everyone else in the table's got +4, +5 at the max. Where'd you get a +7? Show me the math. There are players who are more fastidious and detailed in their organization. I mean, some of them are better than IRS auditors. But no matter what the reason is, it's good to stay reminded of where your characters are, even if, like I say, with the experience points and in their advancement. And also, is there too much magic? Like I said, it isn't just, is one character have it? What if all your characters are sitting on a dozen magic items? We don't run into that problem. In our world, we're low magic for a reason. We would like you to fall back on your skills and your talents and your mind, as opposed to just reaching into the golf bag. But your table might like a lot of magic, and you might be doling it out, and then you realize these guys literally do have the golf bag. They have 14 clubs in there, and they got something to pull out for every occasion. You might want to try to cull that back.
Yeah, and checking in with just the players is equally important too. You take the first 15 minutes of a game session and just be like, hey, how's it going? Are you happy with what's going on? Is there something you're hoping to see? And I think that goes a long way towards building that trust and that relationship between your players at the table and you as the GM, because it really is important to deliver a lot of what they're looking for, and you can. You imagine managing a lot of personalities at your table, and everybody kind of wants something a little different. You may get a player that just wants to, he wants a John Wick adventure. And then you may want someone who wants a little more role play. a little more masterpiece theater in there. And you could do all that stuff. You can dole out something at the buffet line that everybody likes to snack on. But having these little discussions maybe once a month or once every other month is a good practice, I think, towards building towards that.
Well, your entire scenario is it's an organic creature. I mean, you as the DM are sitting at the head, but there's a whole lot of body behind you, and that's your players. And sometimes the body decide which way the head's going to go. You got to rethink it and nudge them back and corral them back in the line, but you can't ignore them. You can't have the head without the body.
Yeah, absolutely.
So listen to what they say and do the best you can to incorporate what they're looking for. Everyone's going to have a good time.
Sometimes I think it's necessary to have another session 0. I don't know if you would call it a session 0 because you already had one, maybe a 0.5, if that's even a thing. But if
We've done, well, I've actually done this before and had, we're having a refresher. All right, here's the high points, here's the low points. Yeah, does everyone remember this person, that person? Here's some names, here's some places. If you recall, you're supposed to be going for this. You've acquired these 3 items, but you need 2 more. And I've spent a good 15, 20 minutes doing this just out of the clear blue sky, usually before we start back up. It's usually sparked by someone going, what were we going after for? How many things do we have? That's usually the one person who doesn't keep any notes. But it's good to remind somebody, no, we're not looking at you, Lou. We just both happen to be stretching our necks in that direction.
Okay, so let's move on then.
Sometimes you may have to speak with a player individually too. There might be a player that needs to pull you aside and go, hey, I was kind of hoping that we get a little of my backstory in there. Is that something that's going to happen? Is that something we could do? Is this part of my story something that can fit within the campaign? Or I'm kind of having an issue with this, or I'm having an issue with that player. What are your thoughts on that? And that you may have to have that one-on-one discussion with someone because they're not comfortable bringing it up at the table. They may
Correct.
come to you. You have to be available for that sort of thing.
Yeah, a little meeting before the game and after the game.
Yeah.
And we've always done that, and that's usually where a lot of these things will come up. They will happen naturally, usually. When they say, well, I was kind of hoping about this, and is there any way you can move me to the other side of the table? Because this guy over here, it's not that he bothers me, it's just there's just something about him that, whatever it may be, it's not a problem, but I think I'd be more comfortable over there.
Yeah. And that's fine.
And that's fine. You do what you got to do. If you're using assigned seating, then you might have to change it. Our guys usually just come in and just sit down.
Yep.
And they eventually sit in the same spot every week. Even go, hey, whatever chair's open, go ahead and grab one. They always seem to sit in the same spot because they want to sit next to that person and harass them.
That's what Lou does to me.
I know. He sits
Monday
next to you. He complains incessantly about how you pick on him, and vice versa, by the way. But you two always sit next to each other.
That's weird. The devil you know is better than the devil you don't.
I say that all the time about you, Scott. So I guess let's talk about finding a GM style and sticking with it.
This is an interesting one.
It is.
Developing a storytelling style is, I think, 2 things occurring at the same time. Number one, it's nurtured with time and gaming experience. The more you do it, the more comfortable you become, the more you learn, and you start developing a way to present your monsters, present your encounters, describe what's happening. At the same time, some of this is inherent. It's based on the personality of the storyteller, how they normally would tell something, even in an everyday conversation. So I think you have their natural persona blended with the gaming experience, and you mix these two together, and that becomes your style.
Yeah, and once you have it, I think it's really important to stick to that. It's perfectly fine to hone your skill and try new things, but if you're constantly changing things up, your players are going to be kind of thrown off a little bit.
They're going to be a bit confused.
Yeah, they're not going to know what
thing.
the expectations are. They're just going to be confused.
And then you get, whispers between them. All right, well, I wonder which Scott's going to show up this week.
Yeah.
What?
You have something to say, Lou? You had that look on your face.
Oh, he had that look. Let's hear it.
No, I did have something to say, but I was going to say, not what you thought I was going to say, but that's kind of where I think my problem is, because I try to take a little bit of Scott, a little bit of Bill, and a little bit of Mike, and a little bit of Tom, and I try to mash it all together. It doesn't work well for me. I have to find my own style, which I am working on. But like you said, when I take a little bit of everybody, it's confusing as all hell, because you guys, the bar is way up here, and I'm trying to take the best of everything, and it's kind of hard to make it all fit perfectly, because you guys each have your own style.
Yeah, there's diversity amongst the different game masters.
Very, very much so. And when you try to mash them all together, it doesn't work out so well, I find sometimes, because it's not really mine.
I think it's like being an educator. You have to, when you're an educator, it's like 90% entertainer, 10% educator. You have to bring that knowledge in, but you have to be entertaining to do it. You have to kind of be okay with putting yourself out there and maybe making an ass of yourself a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes you got to be a little goofy, but they'll remember the goofy, and hopefully they'll remember what you're saying while you're being goofy.
Again, you guys are staring at me. Why?
No reason.
You always look like you're about to say something.
I was thinking.
Well, think out loud.
Dangerous sometimes.
Yeah, and to your point where you're plucking things you like from other game masters, I think that's important. It's important to take those things that you like from tables you've sat at, from people you've talked to, from people you've listened to or observed, watching on YouTube. There's tons of live play stuff out there, tons and tons and tons. But you can get a lot from that, listening to those podcasts. We have our favorites, or watching, them on YouTube or whatever have you. But the key is to take those things you like and integrate them into your own style of running a game.
Yeah, don't emulate it exactly. You use it as a resource and go, okay, but this is how I would do that. It's similar to theirs, but not exact. And I think that's how you develop your own style.
And that's right, because when I first started, or a couple times I did do it, I was trying to be exactly like Bill, Scott, Mike, and Tom all rolled into one, and it really wasn't mine, so it didn't feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you never want it to feel forced.
Or fake.
Yeah. And the great thing about trying something is if it doesn't work, you can just stop doing it.
Which I did. That's why you're still running.
Yeah.
I mean, I find one of the good resources to gauge how the play is going is listen to your players after gameplay or before the gameplay starts the week, the next week. What did they remember from the week before? Yeah. And that's what they're talking about. And whether it's good, bad, or ugly, it's been filtered through the course of the entire span, whether it's a week or two or with the last time you got together. It's been filtered by time. What did they remember? Now, if they're all out there laughing, pointing, you did this, and that was great, and I can't remember how you leapt over him and cut him halfway through, and okay, they had a good time. But listen, just sit back and listen to what they're talking about. I think that would be a truer form, an assessment of how your table was running, rather than them speaking directly to you. Listen to what they're saying to one another, because that's what I've always tried to do.
And that's a really reliable gauge as well.
And hard for me, because I'm always talking, so for me to just shut up for a couple of minutes is not easy.
It's got to be so hard.
I'd start quivering and
along with through withdrawals.
But you practice when you find your good points and try not to repeat the bad ones. It's pretty much as simple as that.
Yeah, but find it and stick with it.
Yep, and be consistent. All right, so to wrap things up, there's always something to do when you're responsible for providing the story and scenario for others to play. This is the mantle you have taken up as the game master. But with a healthy dose of inspiration, a big portion of preparation, and a touch of character maintenance, your table, your story, and style will fit right into place.
And those are 5 more habits of a good DM. That's going to conclude this episode. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Please subscribe to the podcast for more great content. If you'd like to hear a particular topic, you can reach us on Facebook at the Dungeon Masters Dojo, or you can drop us an email at thedungeonmastersdojo@gmail.com. Thank you, and have a good day.